All right. Very good morning and happy morning to everybody.
Good morning.
Uh, Present here. Yeah. Good morning. So we can begin today's session, ma'am. Yeah. I hope I'm clearly audible. There is no issue with the audio or the video.
Yeah, no issue.
If it does, all right, great. Very good morning. Um, if that happens, let me know.
Sure.
All right. So just sit on your mats, keeping the back and neck straight. And gently close your eyes. Start observing your breath. Keep the body relaxed. And when you feel ready, begin to deepen your breath. Allow your mind to relax with each consecutive exhalation. Preparing the mind for Om chanting. We'll be chanting Om one time, followed by the Shanti mantra. Inhale deeply for Om. You can repeat after me if you would like. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah.
Sarve bhavantu sukhinah.
Sarve santu niramaya.
Sarve santu niram.
Sarve bhadrantu pashyantu.
Sarve bhavantu pashyantu.
Ma kacchit prabhavat
Om Shanti Shanti.
Just feel the vibrations of the mantra. Join the palms together in front of the chest and rub the palms together. Keep them on the eyes. Very slowly while blinking and looking at your palms, open up your eyes, start coming back with a smile. And namaste to everyone.
Namaste.
Let us begin today's session. So last time we talked of Hatha Yoga and the relevance of Hatha Yoga and how now you have to approach your asana practice, right? So with each and every philosophy class, it will start becoming very clear, you know, each and every limb that is placed like in the process of yoga. What is the intention you have to set behind it? And the moment you change your intention, you will see your practice changes completely. You know, the results of the practice change completely. You know, it's like scolding, right? Sometimes we scold because we are reacting to the irritation or the anger that we feel, right? But sometimes, you know, our parents, they scold us because they really care about us and they don't want us to make those mistakes, right? So the intention behind their scolding is completely different and very pure, right? So, you know, even when they scold, you listen to that because you know that they have the highest good in mind. So something like that, each and every process, like each and every limb of yoga, you know, you can practice same asanas with a mind to gain flexibility and same asana with the goal of freeing yourself from all your sufferings, not just increasing your flexibility, right? So you can go ahead and change the intention, and then you will see how, you know, when the intention changes, your entire practice and the result of the practice would completely change, right? If you are doing it under stress or just to gain that flexibility, you will see that more you want to run or run behind something or chase something, the farther it keeps getting, right? So when you change the intention, you are open to accepting the time that you are taking for your own practice, right? So last time, you know, Hatyu Pradipika, this question came up. Who wrote that? So Swami Swatmaram. Swami Swatmaram is the original like writer of Hatyu Pradipika, and the commentary is given by a lot of people, but Bihar School of Yoga has a very elaborate commentary. So if you want to read in detail, you can go ahead and search for that book online. It's a red covered book and pretty thick if you are planning to order the original one, if you like reading with the book in your hand, or else you will also be able to find the soft copy on the internet, right? So, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
said
okay,
thank
okay.
you.
I thought you were asking. Oh, no, no, I thought you
No.
were. All right, so let's begin today's topic then. So today we are going to discuss another very important text, right? Patanjal Yoga Sutra. Patanjal. Patanjal Yoga, YOGA, and Sutra, SUTRA. Right? Patanjal Yoga Sutra. Some books, you will find Patanjali Yoga Sutra. So the name of the author was Patanjali, but the text is called Patanjali Yoga Sutra, or you will also find it by the name of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. That is also correct, but it is not Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Okay. So from this thing itself, the name of the author of this text is Maharishi Patanjali. Maharishi Patanjali, right? So when we were discussing the history and development of yoga, we discussed that from 500 BC till 800 AD, this is considered to be his approximate timeline of existence. Anywhere between this time, the Yoga Sutras were formulated, and they were then further taught ahead, right? And the most acceptable time as per most historians is 400 BC. So the time of this text, most acceptable time is 400 BC. But when you read from multiple sources, you might end up finding different timelines as well. So that is completely fine, since not much evidence exists relating to his existence as well as where he existed, right? So there are only like talks and mostly some traces that they were able to find, that they yes, that this might be the overall location, or this might be the overall time when he existed, right? So, but no concrete information is available regarding this. So this text is quite famous because, like we did in the history of yoga also, we saw that before this, all the information was out there, but it was harder to reach and it was not systematized. So, one limb of yoga is given somewhere, the other one is given somewhere else. So, how to implement it in a systematic order, and from where you need to reach where, he gave a lot of clarity in those things, right? So first, let's talk about the term sutra itself, right? So when we talk of the Patanjali Sutra, the term sutra is used, and this is how the information is actually presented in the text. Shloka also, so shloka, when shlokas were written, right? So Bhagavad Gita is written in the form of shlokas, but the Yoga Sutras are written in the form of, as the name itself consists, sutras, right? So when Patanjali ji was giving this information, he kept it very concise, right? And at the same time, you will see that the way in which he gave knowledge, once again, the form in which it was actually coded language, right? So sutra, we can understand the term sutra in two respects. So one of them is the language was coded, right? That is why you will find so many interpretations on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, because each and every person, depending on their understanding of what he was trying to say, wrote a commentary, right? Gave an elaboration, because he just gave the sutras and only 195. So if you will just buy the book of the sutras, it will be a very thin book, right? Very, very thin, 195 sutras, and it is complete, right? So very short text. But in order to understand and gain a better, idea of what he was trying to say. A lot of commentaries eventually came up, which made an effort to push whatever he was trying to say forward and make it more understandable. So first thing is Sutra is coded language, right? So when he gave this text, when he gave this information, he gave it in a little bit coded form, right? And then the second aspect of sutra, when we look at it, so sutras are, meaning of sutra is thread, like in a chain, basically, right? So when you read the text, you will have to start the beginning, and the earlier sutras are going to support the consecutive sutras. So you cannot just open any chapter and start reading from there. You have to go from the beginning till the end, right, in order to gain the proper understanding. So like even for Bhagavad Gita, like if we see each and every chapter, it is talking about one form of yoga. So if you want to read about Karma Yoga, you will open that particular chapter and read about Karma, right? So you will understand what Karma Yoga is. It has no connection to previous chapter, which might be talking about some other form of yoga. But yes, even that knowledge is given in a flow. But you can still take out certain topics and just read them, and you will understand them completely, right? But the sutras, yoga sutras, are not written in that format. You need to start from the beginning, and in order to understand, even to reach the beginner level, you need to understand, okay, this is going on. What is he talking about? If you do not read the first chapter, you will never know what yoga is or what he's trying to say, what your target is, what you're trying to achieve. You won't be able to understand it, right? So the person who is going through this text or wants to gain this knowledge should start from the beginning, and he will see this entire, very beautifully written. He has written it in a very beautiful manner where he has connected everything, right? So once you read it in a flow, you will be able to gain better idea of where you are, and what you need to practice is also already connected to the previous things, right? So it's flow of information, right? So when he even gave this knowledge, he gave it in one flow, in one sitting, and he did not even speak, right? He was just transmitting that knowledge, and it was, giving that realization to the people who were listening to the knowledge that he was giving. So he just started, and when he started, he went in a flow, giving this information, and he did not stop before he completed the information, right? So in between he did, I will tell you a story right now. So, that's the particular form, right? And he divided the entire text into 4 chapters. Right, 4 chapters, and he called them Pada. Pada. Right, so like I will tell you each and every name. So Samadhi Pad, Sadhana Pad, like this, you will find the name of the chapters. And the text has a total of 195 sutras. But in some places, and actually right now, if you search the internet also, you will find 196 sutras. This is only because as the commentaries came in, one sutra was broken down into 2, and then the commentary was given, right, on that particular sutra. So because this happened, the number increased by 1, and you will find in most places 196 sutras, the mention of 196 sutras. But in the original text, there are only 195, where that particular sutra was 1. But eventually, it was broken down into 2, and commentaries were given in that manner, right? So let's come back to a few stories about Patanjali, because since I told you his timeline, his existence is quite mysterious when it comes to historic terms. So let's just go back a little and enjoy a few stories related to his existence and how he came, right? So one very famous story goes on like this, that the world already had the knowledge of Ayurveda, and already knew how to cure people of their physical ailments through the practices of Ayurveda. So these this knowledge has existed from ancient times. So Ayurveda is nothing new. Like today, it's gaining a lot of popularity, right? On a very natural and healthy way of living. But it's very ancient knowledge, as is yoga. Very ancient knowledge. You're not studying anything new in your yoga philosophy classes, right? It has already existed. Somewhere we lost most of the touch that we had with that knowledge, right? So Ayurveda existed, and people, all the physical ailments, there was some treatment for it, right? But eventually, the rishis and munis, they saw that, uh, you know, uh, there's some other form of ailment that the human being is being captured by, the mental stress, the mental disorder, emotional ups and downs, there's some form of suffering that still exists even if a person is healthy, right? So in order to gain that understanding, how we have to cure it, some rishis and munis, they went to Lord Vishnu, right? And Lord Vishnu, if you will see an image of Lord Vishnu, you will see that he is resting on a serpent, right? And the serpent has 1,000 heads, right? So Shesha, right, his serpent. So when the munis went to Vishnu with this doubt and this, desire to attain some knowledge which could cure other more subtle forms of suffering of human beings, Vishnu ji, sent his own, like the serpent that he rested on, right? So Shesha ji, he sent Shesha ji in order to pass the knowledge of yoga, and Shesha ji reincarnated on this planet as Patanjali, Maharishi Patanjali, right? So one story goes on something like this, and if we come to the other stories, they are also quite interesting. So, one of them is like, Sheshaji basically is considered to be, Patanjali is considered to be a reincarnation of Shesha, right? So the 1,000-headed serpent on which Vishnuji rests, right? So another very interesting story, one time Vishnuji, he was just resting and he fell asleep. And as soon as he fell asleep, he immediately got connected to Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva, was dancing at that moment. So if any of you know anything about Lord Shiva, right, you would know that he has this very famous dance called Tandav, right? And he perfected the art of dancing as well. There is an asana that you do, Natraj asana, right? So that is also connected to this part only, where Shivji dances, right? So he's also called Natraj, right? So Shivji, his dance is quite famous, and very very beautiful, in fact. So Lord Vishnu immediately got connected to Lord Shiva, and when he closed his eyes, he could see Lord Shiva dancing, doing the Tandav dance, and he was quite enchanted by it. And how sometimes something happens, and we start reflecting that same energy. Like if you are sitting in a room and somebody yawns, right? So all of you will start yawning, right? So there would be this whole environment of sleep that would be created in the room because one person yawned, right? So something like that, when we see someone in such a trance-like state, so we start reflecting that energy. We start, feeling that energy too. So same thing happened when Vishnuji closed his eyes and saw Lord Shiva dance. He, uh, started radiating, or he started vibrating at that frequency, same frequency he had. And because he was getting that same level of energy, his body became very heavy, So when his body became quite heavy, Sheshaji, he had such a hard time, just uh, keeping Lord Vishnu like stably rested upon himself, right? So the weight got too much, and Sheshaji was just about to, give up. He was just like, I cannot handle this weight anymore. And as soon as that breaking point was about to come, Vishnuji woke up, right? And as soon as he woke up, of course, he got disconnected from the dance, right? The dance might have ended, right? And as soon as he got disconnected, his entire body became very light again, right? So he came back to his normal, being, his normal state, right? And as soon as this happened, his body became light, and Sheshaji was able to hold him again, right? So, Sheshaji got very curious. He was like, what is it that happened? So he asked Lord Vishnu, not talking to Lord Vishnu, he asked, what happened? And suddenly your weight became so much, I wasn't able to hold it. And then suddenly you woke up, and I was again, able to hold you very comfortably. So what happened? So that is when, Lord Vishnu narrated everything that I told you right now, that he got connected and saw Lord Shiva dance. And it was quite pleasurable for him, to see that dance. Lord Shiva's dance is quite famous, and uh, uh, somebody who watches it, of course, gets enchanted, like the way in which he would have danced. If somebody, I'm sure, is able to watch that, would immediately get enchanted. Yogi's vibes are also such, immediately captures, right? So when he told him that entire story, Sheshaji, had this very strong desire, to please his own master, right? So he was serving Lord Vishnu, as a place where Lord Vishnu could be seated. So he had this intense desire where he wanted to, learn that kind of dance so he could, uh, perform it for Lord Vishnu, right? He was a very big bhakt also, devotee, right? So when he had this intense desire, and he, expressed it to Lord Vishnu. So Lord Vishnu, at that point of time, he predicted that Lord Shiva is going to give Sheshaji that blessing, that he could reincarnate and learn the form of dance, right? Perfect the form of dance, right? The art of dancing, right? So when Vishnuji predicted this, there was, of course, a time gap before Sheshaji, got this blessing or this boon from Lord Shiva. So he, started meditating. He started preparing himself, right, so that he could be incarnated. And when it comes to yogi, it's like it's very hard for the yogi to come into this world, right? Because the parents also need to be that capable, right? Because the energy of the yogi, it's very hard to hold the energy of the yogi, right? So parents also have to be prepared to give birth to a yogi, right? So while he was meditating with this intense desire, right, he saw a yogini down here on earth, right, who could, give birth to him, right? And for yogi, it's quite difficult. Like, the train, it has a track. So sometimes, some trains cannot go on a particular track. So something like that, when yogi has to come down, very specific parents need to be there who can hold that form of energy, right? If we will see, in history also, not only over here, if you see even Jesus Christ, a particular person was chosen to give birth to him. Not anybody was chosen, right? So this you can see across history, across various religions and gods who incarnated. They had chosen parents, basically, right? So in that same way, while Sheshaji was meditating, he saw this yogini down on earth, right? And she was unable to have a child. So she was wishing and praying for a child for years and years. And, she had almost lost hope that now she could have a child, right? And she had so much knowledge that she wanted to pass down to her child from generation to generation, people earlier used to pass down all the knowledge. So she has had this intense desire to pass down all the knowledge she had, but she did not have a child to pass it down. Right. So she was over here on earth, very in a very devoted manner, praying for a child. Right. And there, Sheshaji was very in high level of devotion of Lord Shiva at that point of time, looking for somebody through which he could come in the human form on this earth, right? And it so happens that when Lord Shiva saw the meditation of Sheshaji and was quite pleased, he gave him that blessing, that he can go and incarnate on earth, right? And over there, that yogini, she had almost given up, but as a last form of asking for a child, she took some water in her hand and offered it to sun. So sun was considered to be, and still is considered to be god in a lot of cultures across a lot of traditions, because earlier, uh, it was seen that sun was, and it still is, and it still is seen that way. But earlier it was more prominent, right? So sun was worshipped as a god because of the sun, and our exact distance from the sun, that life on earth is possible, right? If you would have been a little bit closer, it would be too warm, right? And if you would have been a little bit farther away, it would have been too cold to sustain life on earth, right? So she was in utmost devotion, right? And she just joined her hands together and took some water in it. She just prayed to sun god, yeah, right? Looking at sun god, she offered that water to the sun, praying for a child. And at that same point of time, a very small snake appeared in her hand, right? And that snake soon took the form of a small boy, and she named him Patanjali because Pat means to fall, and Anjali was the way in which she held her hands when she had him, right? So story, do not doubt how this thing happened. Just enjoy the magic of this story. I don't have answers to why it happened in this manner only, but that is why she named him Patanjali, because he fell into her hands while she was holding her hands in that position, right? And he grew up to be a very intelligent yogi who finally systematized the entire process of yoga, right? Another very famous story that goes on related to the life of Patanjali. This is about when he was actually giving the information of yoga. So when he was giving the information of yoga, he said that people asked him to pass that knowledge down. They knew that he had that knowledge, right? Because yogi has those types of vibes, right? You can immediately, when you meet someone, immediately there is some part of you which recognizes if the person is good or not good, or this or that, right? So immediately, when you are in contact with a yogi, even if you have some gurus that you go to every once in a while, you will see that you feel very good and calm and patient when you come into their presence, right? So it's because of the energy that they have, right? So yogi also has that kind of energy, and people knew that he had that knowledge, right, of liberating everyone from all of their sufferings. So in that same manner, people asked him again and again to give that knowledge out. And he said that I have two conditions. If I want to give this knowledge to you guys, I have two conditions. One thing is that there has to be 1,000 people, right? So wherever I'm going to transmit this knowledge, I want that 1,000 people are present, right? Okay, so everybody said, okay, we're going to make sure that 1,000 people are present when you are transmitting this knowledge. We are going to gather these many people. All right. So then he said, my second condition is that when you are giving this, when I am transmitting this knowledge, I want that there is a curtain between me and everybody I'm transmitting this knowledge to, right? So nobody will be able to see me, right? So everybody, no choice, they had to agree to this condition, right? And so they agreed and they said, all right, you give us this information and we are going to make all of these arrangements. So particular date, time, everything was decided, and 1,000 people gathered when Maharishi Patanjali was going to transmit this knowledge to everybody, right? So he sat on one side of the veil, and all the 1,000 students, they were seated on the other side, right? And he started transmitting this knowledge, and not through speaking, like I'm speaking to you, I'm talking to you. He did not speak, right? So he transmitted this knowledge in a completely different manner, where people were able to feel and understand what he was trying to say, right? So he transmitted the knowledge in that form, right? Where people were able to feel what he was trying to say. So when he did that thing, in between, everybody got very curious, because they weren't able to see him. And this beautiful knowledge was being transmitted, and they were feeling so good, right? When this knowledge was being transmitted. So they got very, very curious. So initially, one or two people got curious, right? Like I said, the energy spreads very quickly. So if you're sitting in a class and somebody in the class is, in a very bad mood, and you're just sitting with that person, you will feel it, right? Then that gets passed on, right? So you try to avoid, you're just like, okay, this person is very sad, I will not spend time with this person, right? We do that a lot of times. Or this person is very angry, let me stay away from this person. Why? Because you will catch that anger without even knowing it. You will start feeling frustrated, irritated. If somebody in your home is angry, you catch on that. You also get irritated and frustrated. That person had a reason to get angry, but you end up quarreling with that person. Why? Because you catch their energy. Maybe you do not, sometimes, you do not have any real basis to even argue about, but you catch that energy. You are gripped by their energy, the intensity of their energy, right? So same way, curiosity, one, two people spread in the entire crowd, right? So at the same time, a very little boy, he was sitting in the crowd and he wanted to, use the washroom. So, and as I told you, when Guru sits and gives the entire knowledge, everybody has to be seated over there. No breaks, no nothing. You guys still get 5-7 minutes break after one class, or you have gaps between your classes, right? But earlier, when the Guru came in and he transmitted the knowledge, no breaks, right? No moving around, nothing like that, right? So very seriously, students used to sit and take that information from the Guru, right? So, but this little boy, had to use the washroom, and so he stepped out. Very momentarily, he stepped out. And it so happened that at that point of time, the crowd got very, very curious, right? So one of them finally had the courage, took the courage, and lifted that veil up, right? In order to see who is transmitting this knowledge, what is going on. So as soon as he did that, unfortunately, it so happened that everybody over there, was, you know, burnt. It is said that everybody who was sitting over there got burnt immediately, and everybody, just vanished, and in a fraction of seconds, like, in those few fractions of seconds, they all vanished, right? So something like that happened, and Patanjali ji, when he was transmitting this knowledge, he was very hopeful that, these 1,000 people are going to go ahead and spread this entire knowledge, and, free humankind of all of these, illnesses that have no solution, right? So at that point of time, Patanjali ji, when he saw this thing, he got very, very disappointed, because he had to he had a very big goal in his mind, and now nobody was left. He had almost come to the end of the information, and everybody who was taking that information, was not there, right? How will that information get passed on? So at that exact point of time, the little boy stepped in, and Patanjali ji noticed this, right? So now Guru is Guru, right? So the student made a mistake of not asking, right? So the student was given both a blessing and a curse at that point of time. Again, same thing, right? So first thing, he called that student and he finished transmitting the entire knowledge, right? So the entire knowledge was transmitted to that one student, and then the punishment was also given. So Patanjali ji said that you will not be able to be free from this existence right now that you have, before you transmit this knowledge to one more person, right? So you will be stuck over here. No matter how many years pass, you will be stuck over here unless and until you find a capable student to pass down this knowledge, right? So, but the blessing was that he had the entire knowledge of yoga with, right? So in English, I think we can call it a demon, right? So he was like a demon who existed, and the forest in which he lived on a tree basically, and the forest in which he lived, where he lived, a lot of people used to pass by, and the condition for transmitting that knowledge was that they first had to answer one question, right? I don't know what the question was, but they had to answer one question, and if they could, he would go ahead and transmit that knowledge to them. And if they couldn't, by default of his own nature and being, he had to eat them, right? So because in Hindi, like, we call rakshas, right? Or English we call demon, right? So because of his nature, because of the way he was, right, he had no choice. He had to kill them, eat them, right? So thousands of years, it is said thousands of years passed, right? And no traveler could answer the question that he was asking, right? And the question was the basis on which he could transmit the knowledge. So he was stuck for thousands of years. He was stuck, and from above, Patanjali ji saw this thing, and after thousands of years, he himself came back on this earth, right? And became the student. So the teacher became the student once again, and he came back. He took all of that. He, crossed that forest, answered that question, so that the that boy who had come to him years ago could be freed, right? So he came back, he answered the question, and he took the knowledge of the Yoga Sutras, which he wrote down at that point of time, right? And that is how the boy also got free, and eventually the Yoga Sutras were passed down, passed on from generation to generation, right? So these are a few stories that revolve around Patanjali and his existence, how he gave and transmitted the knowledge, right? And many more beautiful stories you will find, right? If you search, you will find a lot of things about his life, and you will find that a lot of information is also missing about his life. But the way and the reasons he had, and the way in which he came on earth is quite interesting in itself, right? So let's come back to the text itself. We're almost out of time, but still, right? So let's come back to where we were, back from the story world to the thing that we are trying to understand over here. So, this is how the Yoga Sutras, they came into existence. And as I told you, they are divided into 4 chapters, right? So first chapter is called the Samadhi Path. SAMA, P-H-I. Samadhi Pad, P-A-D-A. First chapter is called Samadhi Pad. Then we have the Sadhana. S-A-D-H-A-N-A. Sadhana Pad. Then we have the Vibhuti Pad. V-I-B-H-O-O-T-I. Vibhuti Pad. And last we have the Kaivalya Pad. Kaivalya. Kaivalya Pad. So these 4 chapters are present, right? In the text, the full text is divided in these 4 parts, I can say, right? And each and every part has its own, addition of knowledge, right? Tomorrow we are going to discuss in depth what each and every chapter has, but just to give you a brief understanding very shortly because we are short on time today. So samadhi is the absorption, right? The absorption that we are talking about when we talk of yoga, right? So samadhi path will give you, the instructions related to this area, right? And a lot of concepts have been discussed when it comes to this absorption state, and the different types of samadhis have also been discussed over here. Just briefly, I'm telling you. So samadhi means absorption, and the entire chapter is related to the understanding of this absorption state, right? Then we come to sadhana. Sadhana means discipline, right? So then he gives a few things about the disciplines, the types of disciplines he has discussed in the second chapter, right? And he goes in detail when he discusses these things. Then when you come to the third chapter, Vibhuti. Vibhuti means psychic powers, right? So on the path of a yogi, there are certain check marks, there are certain stations, like, if you take the train, right, then if you have to reach from point A to point B, there are some stations that are going to come in between. So same is the concept of the psychic powers. It is one of the stations that you come to when you constantly practice yoga, right? And then you reach your final goal. So it is bound to come before you reach the final stage, but it is one of the stations, and it is very important you don't get stuck on the station, right? Because if I just if I'm the driver of the train and I say that this is the station I want to stop at, I don't want to, the train is headed to Delhi, say, but I stop somewhere in between, suppose any station that comes just before Delhi, I want to stop over there, right? And I say no, I'm not taking the train forward, so I will never be able to reach there, right? If I stop the train over there. It's very important to not get stuck, when people hear the concept of psychic powers, their mind is completely stuck over there. They're like, I want to do this because I want to achieve that, right? So it is, you need to understand it is again just a station, like the flexibility in asana, it's just a byproduct. The psychic powers are just a byproduct, right? So, and then finally he talks of Kaivalya. Kaivalya he has called the final goal, the name he has given is Kaivalya. Kaivalya means, has been derived from the word Keval, K-E-V-A-L, Keval, which means isolation, right? Isolation or alone, right? So when you are in isolation, that is when you achieve the final goal. That is why he gave the name Kaivalya to that goal. So he said the final point of samadhi is Kaivalya, right? So samadhi is not the final point. There are various types of samadhi. But the final point of the practice of samadhi is called Kevalya in his text. And he said this is the final thing. So in the fourth chapter, he talks of Kevalya elaborately. Right. So tomorrow we will discuss more in depth what each and every chapter covers. Right. But for today, the stories were very important. Right. Because stories are stories, and they should always be a part of our life. They add some level of magic, and these stories are quite insightful if you see, related to the devotion that the serpent had towards uh, his own master. I just narrated the story in one flow, but they're very deep things that you can derive out of this. The level of devotion he showed towards Shiva in order to, come down on earth, right? And when he came down, Patanjali ji came down, it is also said that he perfected the art of dance, right? Because he wanted to come down for this reason. And then he also passed down the knowledge of you, right? So he did perfect dance when he was here, like when he incarnated, right? So these small stories, how even a good student, right, taking the permission of the guru, or the guru and student relationship, it's very subtly highlighted in these stories. These stories are not just merely stories of how Patanjali ji came, but very small little things. If you observe, you will see that there is a reasoning behind it, and there is so much you can learn out of just one single story, right? So I narrated 3, 4, right? So are there any doubts from today's class? No doubts? All right.
No.
So if you get time today, for today, what you guys can do is actually go and read up a little bit about Patanjali Yoga Sutra whenever you find time, just to keep your momentum, because tomorrow we are going to again discuss deeply on this topic, right? So whenever you find time, take out 10, 15 minutes for your own self-study so that the momentum is maintained. And I'm already telling you there are so many more stories out there. So if you want to take out those 10, 15 minutes just to read the stories, that is also, I think, very good, right? So anything that keeps your momentum going, right? So then I'll end today's session, right? So let's just do one Om chanting together, right? So we'll chant Om one time, followed by 3 Shantis, right? So just sit straight on your mat and gently close your eyes. And inhale deeply for Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Join the palms together and let's just bow down and start our day with a sense of gratitude for everything we have. And rub the palms together. Keep them on your eyes. Very slowly, while blinking and looking at your palms, open your eyes, start coming back, smile. And namaste to everyone. I will see you all for your pranayam class in the afternoon. Bye-bye and Om Shanti.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Om Shanti. Thank you.
Om Shanti.